everybody. Dorethia Kelly here with another training for you. Welcome to Workspace Spark TV. I have a special guest here that is wonderful, someone who has been a virtual mentor to me in my career, and I'm so excited to have her here. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Lois Frankel.
Thank you for having me, Dorethia. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely. Dr. Lois Frankel, an executive coach and keynote speaker, is perhaps best known as the author of the best-selling business Bible for women, certainly was for me, Nice Girls Don't Get the Corner Office. Yes, this was a wonderful book for my career. She has been a guest on Larry King Live, the Tavis Smiley Show, the Today Show, and 2020. She's been featured in People Magazine, The Wall Street Journal, USA Today. Her latest book, Nice Girls Don't Speak Up or Stand Out, How to Make Your Voice Heard, Your Point Known, and Your Presence Felt, was released in January of this year. Dr. Franco has worked with corporate giants. Yes, show us that. Nice girls don't speak up or stand out. Absolutely. Dr. Franco has worked with corporate giants around the globe, such as Amgen, BP, McKinsey, Lockheed Martin, Microsoft, the Walt Disney Company, the World Bank, just to name a few. She's been recognized for her work with women and girls with the Los Angeles County Commission on the Women's Woman of the Year Award, Maybelline, New York's Women Who Power Through Education Award, a doctorate in humane letters from Phillips Graduate Institute, and a Presidential Medal and Distinguished Alumna Award from the State University of New York at Oswego. Her earned doctorate in counseling psychology is from the University of Southern California. Woo! Now that's a bio.
It's a lot of years.
Thank you so much. I am so glad to have you here with our Workspace Spark community. We really appreciate you joining us.
I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy for all you do for women too.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So I have to just first try not to fangirl out, because this book, now this is the new version. It is called Nice Girls Still Don't Get the Corner Office. When I first started my career, I was looking for books because, of course, I wanted to go all the way to the top. And I was looking for something that spoke to me and what I needed. I needed a how-to. And honestly, I didn't find that many. But when I found Nice Girls Don't Get the Corner Office, it was exactly what I needed. I kept this book in my office, in my desk, back in the days when we had an office with a door. I had a printer in my office. It was my first corporate career job. I thought I was really doing something. Now we're all in cubicles or open spaces, or now we're all at home. But this book helped me through so much as far as navigating the corporate world, things that I should do, things I should not do, how to dress, how to deal with my coworkers, not deal, but how to interact successfully with my coworkers. Like, this was truly, like, I kept it. I wish I had that original one. I'm sure I do, packed up somewhere, but I was highlighting and bookmarking. I mean, and my friends too, like, I would give it away to all my friends, and we were reading it, and we would share notes and different things about work. So this, like I said, I'm trying not to fangirl out, but I don't know. This book has, I know, helped so many women navigate the corporate world. And we're talking to women today, but we're also going to talk to the guys too, because we are all interacting. We're all in this together, and we want to know how we can help each other navigate in the corporate world. So Nice Girls Don't Get the Corner Office, wonderful book. I want everybody to make sure they get it, and make sure they get the new audiobook. We're going to talk about it more later, but we're going to dig in right now. I have a few questions for you. So of course, your Nice Girls is your signature. That's your series. How did your professional journey get you to writing the Nice Girls series? What happened to make you say, okay, I need to do this?
Well, as you know, I'm an executive coach, and as you may or may not know, in the corporate world, and I've been a coach for over 30 years, and in the corporate world, they were really investing in men. So I would find that most of my clients that were referred to me were men. Every once in a yeah, and every once in a while I'd get a woman. One day I got this woman who was referred to me because she was a little bit on the aggressive side of assertive. What do we call those, Dorothea?
Right.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So I worked with her for probably 6 months, and
Mhm.
I went to a coaching session with her, and she was living in Herndon, Virginia, and I was in Los Angeles. So I flew to Herndon, Virginia, and she said, before we get started, I want to tell you that I was invited to sit on the executive committee of my company. And I went to give her a high five, and she stopped me. And I said, what? And she said, I'm not going to do it. Those meetings are a waste of time. And what popped out of my mouth was, honey, you got to quit being a girl.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here was somebody who they felt had some rough edges, and now they're inviting her to be part of them. And like a
Yes.
typical woman, she's thinking she has to be productive 100% of the time. And as I
Yeah.
said to her, they're called meetings. They're not called workings, right? You don't have to be working 100% of the time. You go to these kinds of meetings to see and be seen and market your brand. So on the way back from Herndon, Virginia to Los Angeles, I started thinking of all the things I see women do because they are socialized to think they
Yeah.
have to work harder, they have to be nice, and I outlined the entire book on a plane trip coming back.
Wow.
And I really wanted to write it for all of the women who would never have formal coaches. I
Yes.
wanted them to get the exact same advice I was giving to my clients. And so that's why I wrote it. Now, I did not call it Nice Girls Don't Get the Corner Office. I was calling it Quit Being a Girl, because that's what I said to my client. But the publisher decided they wanted to call it Nice Girls Don't Get the Corner Office. I said, you realize I'm going to spend the rest of my life explaining you can be nice and be successful. And,
Right.
and that's exactly, that's the question I'm always asked. Are you saying I have to be mean and nasty? And I say, no. All I'm saying is you can't be the nice little girl you were taught to be in
Yeah.
childhood and expect to achieve your adult goals. You have to add some other behaviors along the way.
Right. Right. Yes. Yes. This is true. And I want to say, or ask you, what do you think? Because you're right. That whole dynamic of you have to pick a side. If you're nice, you're ran over. If you're nice and if you're quiet, you're ran over. If you're assertive, you're a witch, right? So, because I just had this conversation with a friend of mine who was promoted to she was already in a management position. She was promoted to a director position, and it's all men. And she's like, I just want to do my job. I want them to respect my position, but they talk over her. And because she's quieter, she's like, I don't feel like I have to be so bossy to show that I know how to do my job. And I think that sometimes we feel like we're stuck because we don't want to be mean. We want to be ourselves. But at some point you have to be assertive to be heard, right?
Yeah, you absolutely want to be yourself, because whether you're a leader or you're a team member, whoever you are, you have to be authentic, because if you're not authentic, people smell that out and you're going to get called other things. Yes, you have to be authentic, but you have to be your best authentic self.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what a lot of people say to me. I call it the Popeye Syndrome. I am what I am, right? And I'm not going to change. Well, I'm not asking you to change who you are. I only ask people, and both men and women, to think about what behaviors are not in your current skill set that if you added them would make you a more well-rounded leader, employee, team member, whatever.
Yes.
I want you to think of it like a prize fighter. A
Yes.
prize fighter could have a great left jab, but they're not going to win many bouts if they also don't have a right uppercut or whatever else they need. So the people who win the game are the ones who have the biggest toolkits from which to draw different skills when you need them. So for example, the friend of yours who says, I'm kind of quiet and, but I know what I'm doing and people should listen to me. You can be a quiet person, but if you're sitting in a meeting, you'd better be leaning in. You'd
Yeah.
better be speaking early. You'd better be
Yes.
speaking loudly. There's things that you can do to be your authentic self
Yeah.
and just be your best authentic self.
Yes, yes, yes. Speaking of leaning in, that was a good thing for me. When you wrote in and you said, you're not at the dinner table, don't put your hands underneath the counter, sit up, and make sure your hands are on the table, make sure that your presence is known. That was excellent. That was really excellent. So
Yeah, and something related to that, Dorothea, is, I always say, if you're not sitting at the table, you are not in the room. Because what
yes,
I've seen a lot of women do is if the room is crowded, or if they think it's
yes,
right, they'll take a seat on the periphery. Never
yes,
sit on the periphery and assume someone deserves the seat at the table. Even if you have to drag a chair in and squeeze it in.
in the corner. Yep.
Exactly. If you are not sitting at the table, you are not in the room.
Yes. And I won't let people do that. I will say, no, pull a chair up, pull a chair up. Everybody's at the table, because that's very true. And I'm gonna tell you something. People, they volunteer to do that, but really they don't feel part of the meeting when they do that to themselves. They do feel outside. And you don't want anybody to feel like that, even if they don't know any better. So
Exactly.
that's a good point. So many of us have been in meetings. We talk about mansplaining, you say bropriating, and
Bropriating.
manterupting. And I know I have been sitting in meetings and I'll say something and I feel like I'm a very good communicator, that's my thing. And somebody will come and just repeat what I said. And I'm looking around the room and I'm like, I thought this only happened on TV. You know how you see, when I was younger, I would see that kind of thing on TV and they talk about it. And I'm like, this is happening to me. Like,
Uh-huh.
so I'd like to talk about, because that's another thing. If you're in a meeting and you say something and then a man mansplains you and you say, I just said that, that's what you really want to do. You want to be like, wait a minute, I just said that. Then you guys just hear me say that? If you do that again, you're aggressive, bossy, angry. So I want to talk to the women and how they can handle it, and then talk to the men in the room how they can, number one, avoid doing it, and then number two, be an ally when they see that happening to a woman.
Okay, there's a couple of things that go on here. One is oftentimes we get interrupted when we're using too many words. And that's what manterupting is, right? When a man interrupts you before you're finished. And we have to take a look at whether we are communicating crisply and clearly. Because if we're not, that's when we get interrupted. Now, guys, you can really, any guys who are listening, you can really help women to get to the point by asking them very specific questions. Tell me how to do X, Y, Z. Don't say, what do you think about? Because if you ask a woman, what do you think about, I don't know. I'm thinking of this cartoon I have. I think it says, what do you feel like? And a woman says, well, I'm feeling this, this, and this. And a guy says, I'm feeling like a pizza. Right? I'm feeling like I want a pizza.
Right.
And that's the difference between men and women. And so men, make sure you ask specific questions. Women, make sure you communicate with an economy of words. And in the new book, Nice Girls Don't Speak Up or Stand Out, it's audio. So I demonstrate for you what that sounds like. Now, if you are interrupted, it doesn't mean that you need to just kind of back off. You can either let the person finish what they're saying, and then you can say, let me take the floor again. I wasn't quite finished. That's one thing you could do.
That's a good way to say it. That's
right?
a great
That's
way to say it.
Not too aggressive. You could also, when they start to take the floor, you could say, hang on, John, I wasn't quite finished. Let me finish my thought. But that's a cue to you that maybe you were using too many words. Maybe, not always.
Yeah.
Okay, the second thing you talked about was bropriating. And bropriating is when a man takes your idea as his. And And there's two things that can be done here to make sure that that doesn't happen. First of all, you, along with other women and other men, when you say, what can other men do? You enlist them to say, when a woman speaks, we are going to amplify what she just said. We are going to say something like, you know, before we move on, I would just like to talk about what Dorethia said. I think it's a great idea for these reasons, and I would really support it. Because if someone amplifies the idea, no one else can steal it, right?
That's right.
And both men and women can amplify women's ideas. So that's one way to handle it. A second way to handle it is, okay, the guy steals your idea. When he finishes, what you do, and you have to really practice this so you could do it with a straight face, say, thank you so much for expanding on my idea. It made me realize I'd like to add a few things to it. You just took that right back without, you know, you just told him to go to hell so that he looks forward to the trip.
Basically.
Yeah.
You know what? I love it. I absolutely love it. I had never heard the term bropriating, but that is a perfect explanation. Oh my God, that's amazing.
And then you also mentioned mansplaining.
Yes.
And mansplaining is when a man explains things to you that you already know.
Oh my goodness.
Right?
Yes.
That is really horrible when that happens to you. And I think that's when, you know, in order to maintain your self-respect, you need to, again, say, you know, excuse me a minute, I don't want to sound rude. However, it doesn't sound like you realize that I have a PhD in counseling psychology. I have almost 40 years in human resources, and I have my own consulting firm. So I get this stuff. Okay. How else are you going to let people know? You don't have to explain this to me.
Yes. Yeah. Because that happens all the time. And it's like, okay, we got that.
Yeah. Absolutely. Let him know what it is that you know and why you know it and why you don't need this information.
Exactly. I love it. So what are some common mistakes that women make at work that prevent them from getting what they want, what they've earned, you know, what they deserve?
You know, one is asking permission. Women ask permission of all kinds of things. Would it be okay if I do XYZ when XYZ is your job, right? We ask permission for time off. We ask permission for all kinds of things. You know, I'm thinking about a woman who went to they were doing an offsite, and she went to her boss and said, I'd like to bring some key people from my team. Would that be all right with you? And he said, no, I really just want, you know, our primary team here. And she gets there, and her male colleagues have some of their key people. And she says to them, how did you get him to agree to let you bring these people? And you know what they said? We didn't ask.
We didn't even ask. That's right.
We just brought them.
That's right.
So I think it's important that you think about how often are you asking permission. And I'm not saying that you should be a loose cannon, but you might try informing and not asking more often. Just saying, here's what I plan to do. And do you have any input on it? Not would it be okay, but do you have any input on it? You know, how you might like this done? Or you can ask for input, but not permission. So that's number one. Something else that we do, and I kind of just touched on it, we use far too many words. Now,
we're talkers.
We are. I mean, our verbal skills tend to be better than men's anyway, tend to be. I don't want to paint everybody with the same brush, but they tend to be better anyway. And so what we use too many words because we feel as if people need to know everything in our head. Because that will reflect positively on us, because look how much I know. No, nobody needs to know everything in your head or wants to know everything in your head. Another reason is this, and most women don't realize it, is the more words you use, you soften a message. Yes. The fewer words you use, you strengthen a message, right? So remember years ago, there was that commercial. Oh, no, it wasn't a commercial. It was the first George Bush said, read, my lips. No new taxes. Now, I remember that 40 years later or 30 years later because it was short and succinct. Or we remember what Arnold Schwarzenegger said.
I'll be back.
I'll be back. See, you remembered that because it was short. We even remember Sally Field at the Academy Awards when she accepted, saying, "You like me. You really like me."
Oh, yes, yes,
right?
yes, yes.
Very short. We remember that. We don't remember that for a good reason. But that's another story. So remember that the fewer words you use strengthens your message. And then finally, we use too many words, and this is where guys could really help us because we don't get nonverbal cues from guys that they've heard us. When we speak with other women, and you've been doing it right here today, and I've been doing it, we nod our heads and we give uh-huhs and we do all these things. Guys just look at you when you're talking to them, right? And what do you wind up doing? You keep talking.
You keep talking.
And so guys, if you want women to use fewer words and get to the point, you need to paraphrase what they said and just say, hang on, if I understand you correctly, this is what you're saying.
Yes.
That will help women get to the point. What women can do is prepare their messages in their heads before they open their mouth.
Yes.
Okay. As you probably read about in the book, there's this headline communication model, and it says the first thing out of my mouth should be the most important thing. I should follow it up with 2 or 3 pieces of supporting data or a rationale. And then the third thing that I should do is invite discussion. Now, men don't have to do the invite discussion because they're supposed to be really assertive. But when we do it, we're seen as more strident. So again, in the book, I give you tips for how you can do all these things in the new audiobook, particularly. I do the communication things. I don't know if that's enough mistakes or you want me to keep going.
I think that is good. And I just want to piggyback on something you said for guys. Women, we need to know you're listening. And so you'll be talking to a man and you stop and then he looks up, he's like, what? And he's like, I'm listening. But you can't tell he's listening because either even if he's looking at you like dead on, but not moving his head, no body language, nothing, you're just like, what's going on there? And I think that it shows women that you are listening when you paraphrase the way you suggested that they do, when they ask follow-up questions, and then we feel like we're heard and that you are valuing what we're saying and the points that we're trying to get across. So I think that's very important. And I like the way you help them kind of navigate that piece. Exactly. No, those are great examples. We may have covered this, but one of my other questions was about how women can be powerful advocates for themselves. Do you have anything else to add to that?
Yes. Women often don't ask for what they want because they're afraid that they're going to be seen as too needy or greedy. And so better advocates for herself often means learning how to negotiate. And I'm going to say negotiate like a woman, because the rules for how women and men negotiate are very different. For years, women have been saying, when I negotiate hard like a man, I'm called the B word, right?
Yes.
And that's because you can't, the research now shows you're right. If you do that, you are seen as somewhat not a team player, and you do get called all those words. So what you need to learn is there's some very simple techniques of negotiation that you can use. The first one that you want to think about is your relational accounts. It's always easier to negotiate with someone with whom you have a relationship. And that's why it's important to build warm, collegial relationships all the time. And when you need a relationship, it's too late to build it. So that's number one. You can say almost anything to someone that you're in a good relationship with. But if you have no relationship, it's a lot harder. Second of all, what you want to do when you're thinking about starting to negotiate is know going in what you want coming out. You don't go in and say, you know, I want to talk to you about a raise. I really feel as if I've earned it and I deserve it. Well, what do you want? Right? So you've got to be crystal clear going in what you want coming out.
Coming out. I love it. Yes.
Yeah, because if you're not going to get it. So that's number 2. Number 3, there's a technique that's called contrasting. And it's how you have a conversation that you might be a little bit afraid to have because you don't want to damage a relationship. And the contrasting says what you do and you don't want. So I might say something to you like, Dorothea, I don't want you to think I don't appreciate all the opportunities you've given to me since I've come to work for you, because I do. At the same time, it's been almost 18 months and I've gotten no raise. And what I'd like to propose is that we take a look at what this job is paying in the marketplace and make sure that I'm somewhere at about at the midpoint for what it's paying in the marketplace. You can see I've done an analysis here, and it looks like I'm about 30% of midpoint. So I would need another 20% to bring me up. Now, I don't expect you're going to bring me up 20% all at once. I wouldn't expect that. But I would like to propose that I get 10% this year, 10% next year, and then we stay right on track.
That's good.
Yeah, and so what I've done there, I knew going in what I wanted coming out. I'm assuming I had a good relationship with you, and I used this contrasting. And so I think women need to be better prepared to ask for what they want and to do it using, wherever possible, data, facts, and figures.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This is something that I talk to even my staff. Everybody wants a raise, right? Everybody wants more money. And so they want you to give it to them just because they say they want it. And when you send them back and say, okay, you got to do a write-up and you got to do this and you got to do that, it's like, well, I got to jump through all these hoops to get this. So you know I deserve it. Yes, I do. But I have to take this up the chain. And I can't go up the chain and say, yes, Dorethia deserves a raise. She works hard. Give her more money. So I think that's great. You said, know what you want know what you want out.
Going in. Yeah.
Know what you want going in. Say it again for me.
Going in, know what you want coming out.
Yes, going in, know what you want coming out. Yes, absolutely.
And one other thing that you just mentioned, and if I were to add one thing to the scenario I just talked about, is what you said, which is, in addition to saying I'm, only at 30% of midpoint, I might also say, in the past 18 months, I've accomplished these 5 major things. And when you look at those things, they point to that I've earned this. I don't like when people tell me they deserve something. We all deserve something.
Yeah.
But tell me why you've earned it. And that's what you're saying.
Yes. Tell me why you've earned it. Absolutely. So what are 2 or 3 things, although, you've given us a lot of gold here. What are 2 or 3 things you'd like women listening, and men as well, to take away? 2 or 3 things.
Okay. I have given some things, but there are so many things I'd like you to take away. I think number 1 for both men and women, and I wrote about this in my book, Stop Sabotaging Your Career, which was for both men and women. I want you to think about the strengths that you developed early in childhood. We all developed our greatest strengths almost always early in childhood in response to parental expectations. And those expectations could be implicit or explicit. So you could have learned that strength by watching and learning what you were supposed to do, or by parents saying, you have to be the best in the class, or you have to be the nicest, or always turn the other cheek. And I'll just give this very short example of a guy I was coaching once who was very religious and lived in a home where they said, you always turn the other cheek. If something's done to you, you turn the other cheek.
Yes.
And he was working with a bunch of sharks. And it wasn't working. So to be able to have me say to him, you can be nice about disagreeing, but turning the other cheek entirely leaves you out of the equation and you're going to lose. So what I say to people is think about the greatest strength you have, how you developed it probably in early childhood, which is why you're reluctant to change it at all. And don't give it up, but add new behaviors. Remember the prize fighter. He might have a natural left hook, but he's got to develop the right jab. And the same is true for you. Make sure you have the biggest skill set possible by complementing your existing strengths with new ones. And you can always find out what they may be for you by asking people who know you this question: what can I do more of to be even more effective? Don't ask people what you're doing wrong, because they'll always say, oh, you're doing fine, right?
That's true. That is true. But it's so crazy because when you read, that's what they tell you to do. When you meet with your leader, ask them, what could you do better? What are you doing wrong? I like the way you change it up. What could I do more of? Because if you do more of what you're strong at, you'll do less of what they don't like anyway.
Exactly. Or they'll give you something complimentary. What you could do more of is, listen more and talk less.
Yes.
Right? And then you've gotten the feedback, well, you're a good talker, but you also need to listen. So just, I want everybody to remember, it's about complementarity. So that would be the first thing. The second thing I would say is stop doing your job. If you are going to work and you are doing your job and that's all you're doing, you're not doing enough. Doing your job is table stakes. It's what gets you usually to be able to keep your job. And I say usually because when you think about it, in tough times like these, there's going to be layoffs. There's going to be people who are going to lose their jobs. Well, I think the people that are going to lose their jobs are the people who are doing their jobs.
Just doing their job.
Just doing their jobs. Yes. What you want to think about every single day is, how do I add value? Because that's really what employers want. They don't want you to come to work and just do your job. They want you to identify problems and solutions, to find out ways to make money, to save money, to improve efficiencies. You need to go to work every single day. And some people are just going to their home offices or kitchen table these days. But and how am I going to add value today? Because that's how you're going to keep your job. Okay. So that's number two. And then the third thing that I would say is make sure you are building those relationships inside and outside your organization. When we saw the economic downturn in 2008, what I saw happen was the people who had the largest networks were the ones who got jobs sooner.
Yes.
And, I just had a young woman just the other day. I knew where she was working. And I said, how are things going at such and such a company? And she said, oh, I lost my job in June. I said, oh, no, I didn't know. She said, don't worry, I got another one within a week. Okay.
See.
This is a woman who is like a primo networker. Now, for women in particular, we think that's wasting time. It is not wasting time. You need to be spending probably 5% of your work week managing your career.
I like that.
Yeah, you can't just pretend it's going to happen. It doesn't. You've got to be conscious about how you're going to make sure you get and keep the job you want.
Yes. I like that. I like that 5% of your work week. Managing your career.
So you figure if it's a 40-hour work week, I know a lot of people work more than that, but if it's a 40-hour work week, that's 2 hours a week.
Exactly.
So you need to be attending association meetings, even if they're online, sending people notes, reading and sending
Yes.
articles out and saying, hey,
Yes.
Dorothea, I think you might be interested in this. That's how you build and maintain relationships.
Yes. Yes. And that, I just want to elaborate on that because it's hard to get people to do it. I'm the type of leader that mentors and coaches because I had people that helped me in my career, and I always want to see people do better. I don't expect people to stay in a position just, so I can keep great people on my team. I want people to grow. But it is very difficult sometimes to get people to do something other than what they normally do after work. They're like, oh, I don't want to go to that networking event, or I don't want to do that webinar or whatever. But what I share with them and with my mentees is that this is how you build those relationships, because you never know when you're going to need something, or maybe take that opportunity to help somebody yourself. So it does take a mindset shift when you are used to doing certain things. But I love the guideline of 5% sending out articles, attending events, or now we're in Zoom world, attending webinars. I think that is great advice. Excellent advice.
Just remember, when you need a relationship, it's too late to build it.
That's true. That is so true. All right. So tell us more about your new audiobook, Speak Up and Stand Out.
I am happy to.
I said it wrong again.
Nice girls.
Nice girls don't speak up or stand out. I got to get it right.
Yeah, that's what I got to get it right too. I wrote this book because at the end of my keynotes, the thing that people most come up to me and say is, I wish I had you on my shoulder. Yeah. I wish I had you on my shoulder, whispering in my ear, and when I need to say this, or I need to do that, or, whatever. And so I started thinking about it, and I thought, there are no books out there that are comprehensive on communication. There's books on assertiveness, there's books on negotiation, there's good books out there. Yes. But I couldn't find one that I would recommend that had it all in one place. I also couldn't find one that was audio, because if you want me on your shoulder, that means you want to hear me.
Yes.
And so originally when I sold this book to my publisher, which is Hachette, it was in the form of a book. And I started writing it, and I realized, wait, this is not going to lend itself to people just reading it. They need to hear it.
They need to hear it.
Yeah, I went back and I negotiated, and I said, I would like to propose that this book be an audio out first and written later. And so that's what we did. And it contains, close to 100 common scenarios that you may be in, and you want to communicate more powerfully. It has everything we talked about. Wow. And more.
Wow. Yeah. Yes. We've got to get that. Everybody definitely check out Nice Girls Don't Speak Up or Stand Out. And I love the fact that you did it as an audiobook, because you're right. And we are listening more. We're able to listen to it while we're driving, or we're around the house, on our lunch break. And I imagine that it also kind of gives us that boost and that confidence. It sounds like it's a reference. Like you can always be like, oh, I'm facing this issue. I can go back and listen to this audiobook. So that is excellent. That is excellent.
And one other thing that I'd like to offer to anybody who is one of your constituents who sees this, if you will contact me through my website, which is drloisfrankel.com, if you'll just contact me through my website, I'll send you a free companion workbook that goes along with this. Because what I realized is that, some people are auditory and they remember. Some people need to see it. So I created a workbook that has the key points that are in here, and kind of the underlying tools that you can actually go back and you can read about them, and you can also use them to plan out your own scripts.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you so much for offering that. We'll make sure that we put that in the notes and in our inserts. Absolutely.
Okay, great.
Thank you so much. So this has been wonderful. I have learned so much in our time together. How can, in addition to your website, which I'd like you to say that again, how else can people connect with you?
Yes, my website is just my name. It's drloisfrankel.com.
Mhm.
And I'm also active on LinkedIn, which is Dr.
Mhm.
Lois Frankel. And if you'll connect with me on there, what you'll see is a couple times a week, at least, I try at least a couple times a week, to post articles that are of interest, I think,
Mhm.
to women in the workplace. I think one of the recent ones I posted was just how in this COVID, COVID is negatively impacting women more than men. So that's an
Yes.
example. And sometimes I just read articles that I think might help you with your career. Also, you're going to see me on LinkedIn reminding everyone to register to vote.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, and to register to vote by mail, because I
Yes.
think the lines could be very long. We don't know what's going to
Yes.
happen, but make
Yes.
sure that your voice is heard at that
That's right.
table.
That's right. I absolutely, absolutely. We must register to vote. We have ours sitting on the kitchen table.
Good.
But I want to ask you this quick question. Are you still executive coaching?
I don't really do coaching anymore.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Okay. I was just wondering because you had said initially that, well, let me ask you this question then. When you first started, you were just getting mostly men.
Mhm.
When you started publishing the Nice Girl series, I imagine a bunch of women came, right? Or were you still getting men?
Not so much. That's
Yeah.
what was really, it was troublesome to me at first, because
Mhm.
all of a sudden I became a women's coach, and that was fine with me. But what happened to all the guys that I
Yeah.
was coaching? And a very smart woman said to me, Lois, we each need to create our own brands. And
Yes.
your brand is women in the workplace. And my
Yes.
advice to you is that you go with it. And I
Yes.
did. And this is actually a piece of advice to any entrepreneurs out there, that it's counterintuitive. But when you narrow the population or your product, when you narrow down your focus, you actually get more business, because everybody wants an expert, right? And so
Yes.
when I was just a coach, there's a lot of people who are just coaches. But when
Yes.
I became a coach for women in Fortune 500 companies, all of a
Mm.
sudden there weren't a lot of those. So I got a bigger market share. So it's counterintuitive, but it works.
Yes, because you want to help everybody. I've
Yeah.
actually had that issue in my business coaching and financial coaching as well. So that's great advice. That's great
Hmm.
advice. Well, thank you so much. This has been wonderful. I'm so excited. I promise you, I would have never in my wildest dreams thought that I would be sitting here talking to Dr. Lois Franco. If you'd have told me that when I was 24, 25, 26, and starting my career, I would have been like, nah. But I'm very excited, and I thank you for sharing with us today.
Well, thank you for the invitation. And it's a good lesson that if you don't ask, you can't get, because I try to accommodate as many requests as I get, because I want to walk the talk and I want to help empower women.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.